Today, we are doing a 2026 NFL mock draft, and I am joined by a very special guest of the show, PFF's own Dalton Wasserman. Dalton, welcome to the show and say hi to the people.
Appreciate you having me on, man. I mean, you talk about everything that I get to do. There's plenty of these mock drafts, for the PFF NFL show, the PFF college football show as well. So really just getting all these reps in and going through all the scenarios we're going to see, right? It's draft season. We're in the full swing of it now. Free agency this past week was a lot of fun to cover, but now we can really get full speed ahead towards the draft.
Absolutely. And we've already talked about this before. Dalton is taking the odds. I am taking the evens because you said you wanted to avoid the Jets pick. I want to avoid the Cardinals pick. Mutually beneficial deal here. Let's get into this, though. I mean, are you going to shake it up at one? I assume not. But
no shakeup needed. I mean, the obvious is the obvious. You can write it in pen and Sharpie and whatever else you want to write it in. Fernando Mendoza is going to be the Raiders' new quarterback. And look, they've spent the rest of this offseason so far looking to surround him to improve the supporting cast. Obviously, Tyler Linderbaum going in there, Jalen Naylor getting in there at receiver, a little more help. I still think that's a position they could attack later in the draft. And then trying to build this defense as well, right? You're keeping all of a sudden through all of the roller coaster that we had last week. They're keeping Max Crosby. You've got Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker, several other players they've signed. So it's all about Fernando Mendoza in Vegas.
I would ask you about your thoughts on the Raiders and Ravens situation. I don't know if you're cleared to kind of like go into the morality of it and whether you speculate anything. But if you are able to, do you think there's something fishy going on, or did they actually think they're going to bring in both Max and Trey?
No, I don't think they were going to do that. I think there's too many coincidences when you talk about the Ravens weren't an early player for Hendrickson, and then it seemed like once the price came down into their range, they were. I find it funny that the price was the exact same contract, basically, that Max Crosby currently has, and that's what they gave Trey Hendrickson. And then you go, and look, there's nothing illegal about what they did. They didn't violate any rules or anything.
Right.
It's, before the new league year started. And obviously, if they did have a legitimate medical concern, then fine, because that's been a talk with Crosby since December. But it is that there's too many things that came together in too similar a fashion to me, especially with the contracts that suggested they weren't going to get both of those guys. I mean, it's a great theory. It's a great even fantasy football IDP type of theory, but I don't think that was going to happen at all.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not like really a rule-breaking thing, like you said. It is more of a ethical concern. And it's like, really, like, I don't know. It definitely, I don't know how legitimate it is, but I heard that there was a GM that ended up texting. I think it might have been McShay or it might have been Pat McAfee saying it's a bunch of BS. Definitely it seems intriguing to see if that actually has any sort of ramifications in terms of the, team to team dynamics. But this was the pick that you were talking to me about, saying like, going to give this one to you. The Jets, I ended up seeing their free agency moves. To me, I felt very intrigued by the fact that it was a lot of edge 3/4s that they brought in. Both the Sai. I'm forgetting the other one off the top of my head. But they ended up bringing
Enigbari from Green Bay.
Bingo. So they ended up providing a good amount of depth with some seniority. And then they also brought DeMario Davison on a 2-year contract. To me, that screams almost like risk mitigation for Arvell Reese, whether he's a linebacker or an edge. Doesn't require him to be an instant contributor, but allows him the opportunity to be at the same time. So to me, I feel like that's just the right way to go about it. You also have Devondre Sweat manning the middle. So you also, not necessarily being on a 4-man front, you feel a little bit more comfortable with Arvell being there at number 2.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, you got to carve out a role for him, but now you mentioned it. You've got veteran mentors who can teach him either or both positions at an NFL level. He's already a very good linebacker, so he could work off ball there. I know he's obviously announced at the combine that he's an edge rusher, and that's obviously for future, cash considerations. Obviously, I get it with the contract games and all that, but no, it feels like that's the road we're going down here, is that they're going to take a guy that they feel might be the best athlete in this entire draft and let it rip from there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm curious what you do here at number 3.
This is a hard one. I mean, you have several options. I mean, this Cardinal team, they need to get better in the trenches on both sides of the ball. I think, was it Zaven Collins? No, it was Josh Sweat that just requested a trade.
Yes.
So that's another interesting piece of this decision. I think you can't really go wrong. It could be offensive line. It could be Sonny Styles right there at linebacker, because this is one of the worst linebacker rooms in the league. It could be defensive line. I'm going to, man. I've been going Francis Mauigoa a lot with this pick, but I do wonder, especially now, if they're actually going to try to trade Sweat or if something's going to happen with that. If we go back to if we go back to the edge market here. I'll go with Ruben Bain this time. I don't think this is a pick I've made recently, at least not in a while. I'm going to say Ruben Bain. I know the arm length is a concern, but I was just watching his tape just one more time the other day. At this point, really for the fun of it, because I've watched so much of this guy over the last 3 years. He really is still such an impact player, both as a pass rusher and as a run defender too. I mean, he was the entire key to Miami's run defense, and I think with the Cardinals, if they want to even get multiple on their fronts and move them inside to the 5 technique and things like that at times, I don't see any issue with taking Ruben Bain here. They still need help at right tackle, and Mawanoa, his teammate, would be a consideration, but I'll take Bain. I think he'll be higher on the board.
It is something. So I was talking to my friend about this earlier today because he's a big Eagles fan. Obviously, the news with Josh Sweat wanting to be able to be moved. It's like, does he go back to Philly or does he go to Gannon over in Green Bay? Those are, I think, the 2 biggest players potentially for that. And so it definitely opened my mind up to the market as well at edge, because people's number one concern with Maui Noah at number 3 is, was he a top 3 player? And the answer, I think, is pretty much unanimously probably not. I think you'd agree to that. Like, maybe, I don't know where you have him specifically on your board, but I assume it's not in the top 3. Fair?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, if you don't have him top 3, some people feel very uncomfortable with that. Ruben Bain, if you could neglect the arm length, talent wise, it makes sense. So I talked to him, and it almost feels a little bit Brandon Grammy, like in the fact that maybe he'll only have 1 year with like double-digit sacks, but he's an absolute devastator. You're going to feel the impact every single play, even if it doesn't show up on the stat sheet. And that does matter. It is one of those like aspects of the game that, in my opinion, could end up being worth a lot more than maybe the final contract says. But number 4, Tennessee Titans. I've been saying this for a hot second. I'm open to alternatives like David Bailey, Sonny Styles. I think linebacker's not a big issue, but it's it's Robert Saleh. I trust him to be able to work with someone who's a freak like that. David Bailey, if you want to basically get rotation in there with Jermaine Johnson not being a long-term option. But I do want to invest in the offensive side of the ball. You have a number 1 pick at quarterback, and Jeremiah Love doesn't come around every single year. So I feel like we might see David Bailey's every single year, really solid pass rushers. There's also ways to play money ball with that position that, especially in this draft, you can't at running back. I'm going to roll the dice and go after Jeremiah Love here. We've got Saleh, who just came from San Francisco, where they use Christian McCaffrey like religiously. And then Brian Dable, who felt the impact of losing Saquon Barkley. I think there's going to be enough reverence for running back, and it can end up working there.
I completely agree. I think the 2 guys in this scenario for that pick, it's either Love or David Bailey, right? I think Bailey would be Robert Saleh's type of wide 9 edge rusher that could really beef up that pass rush, but they really got after it in free agency on the defensive side, right? So I'm with you. I don't think they have a desperate need at linebacker. Cedric Gray was really, really good in the run game this past year, almost out of nowhere. I think that changes the complexion of that second level, and Salah's really going to like him, even alongside Cody Barton, who's a solid veteran. But I'm starting to get, I'm with you. I'm starting to get the hunch more and more that we could very well see Jeremiah Love go forth and really start to be the heartbeat of that offense.
Absolutely. And correct me if I'm wrong. There's a lot of edges that I trust from wide 9 in this class. There's a lot of them that, in my opinion, aren't really going to hold up if they have to be just on a 4-man front. But from pure wide 9, like there's guys who can just take off, have great get off, and actually know their timing and their angles, especially from good distance. So I'm a big fan of the potential not taking someone at 4 and maybe getting a good answer down the board.
I do think that's true. I think this edge defender class, I think it's the deepest position in the entire class. So when you talk about, okay, what are my options and the scarcity of it, Jeremiah Love's the only running back that's even close to in a first-round consideration for me, whereas you talk about at the top of the second, Tennessee could get a really good edge rusher like you mentioned.
Absolutely. I'm curious what you do here at number 5. This is also one that kind of got convoluted once Tremaine Edmonds got thrown into the equation, but how much does he throw a monkey wrench into the socket?
I'm actually going to say not too much, because if it was going to be down to either Love or Styles for me anyway with this pick, I'm going to go with Sonny Styles. If Tremaine Edmonds comes in there, and I know they brought back Micah McFadden too, but McFadden's really a liability in coverage and overall just a relatively average, maybe even a little bit below average player. Even though he's got starting experience, I would like McFadden in more of a depth role. I think to add Sonny Styles in there now with the veteran and Tremaine Edmonds in the middle of that defense, and we know how much John Harbaugh values that middle linebacker linebacker position, right? So I think when you add Styles' athleticism on the second level, especially for a team that was just terrible in run defense this past year, and they play below their talent level as a unit, right? That's why you're seeing some shuffling now, especially at that second level. But I think Styles is a really good fit in that defense. I think him or Jeremiah Love is going to be the pick there. It's just going to be interesting if they get their choice between the both of them, which one they would go with.
I'm curious. So sell me a little bit on Jeremiah Love. I almost feel like it's a little bit of a smokescreen right now, but I'm more than willing to be coached up on that aspect. What like do you believe that's just because of the fact it would be like a two-headed approach with Scatabo, or is there like a little bit more depth to it?
I think as far as for the Giants, it's the ability to create explosive plays, right? Jeremiah
Mm.
Love is a home run hitter. I mean, if he turns the corner on the outside, I was there when he ran for that 98-yard touchdown run against Indiana. It's just a different speed, right? And I like Scatabo a lot. And then I've got my FAU legend, Devin Singletary, is still in that backfield too. But to
Love
add
him.
that home run ability, that dimension of speed, that's what makes the special backs really special, is the ability to take 10-yard runs and turn them into 40s and 50s and 80s, right? And Love is
Yeah.
the one guy in this class that consistently does that, right? So you just don't get too many of those home run hitters. And the Giants, even with Scatabo in there, we don't know what he's going to look like coming off the injury. And there's still absolutely a role for him. But Love
Mm.
and the home run hitter that he is, he can change the dynamic of your run game.
Harbaugh does love his running backs too. So definitely I can see that for sure. All right. Number 6, we have an interesting situation here because Maui Noah is just never here for me. So it's like a whole new variable to the equation. Now they signed Titus Howard to a 3-year deal. The question is like outside of, the top tackles here with Maui Noah and Freeling, like, is there a legitimate other option? My only answer to that would be how comfortable do you feel about wide receiver at 24? I think you're probably on board with me. Like left tackle and wide receiver feel like the primary positions to target. Is that fair?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, how comfortable do we feel about left tackle at 24, which is risky business. If you have a tackle that's worth starting, probably not going to be there at 24. And then wide receiver wise, is there somebody that is can't miss here at number 6? And it's an extreme drop off to 24. I think if Jordan Tyson, I don't know where your opinion is on Jordan Tyson comparatively to the other receivers, but if he is to me like healthy, I have him as a top 2 player talent wise. That's where I would start debating it. But the problem is he probably looks like Mike Evans' hamstrings the moment he touches, that electrical substation. Not really a huge fan of rolling that dice. So I'm personally going to go with Monroe Freeling, true left tackle. Doesn't have actual questions about whether he can play left tackle. It's just more of an experience thing. And personally, I think he made the right choice about coming out in terms of his draft stock. Part of me wishes he went back to get a little bit more experience to be able to be more pro ready day one.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, there's definitely some parts of his game to me, especially in the run game, that he's got to tweak. And there wasn't a ton of, he did get better in pass protection as the year went on, but Georgia's offense also made it a bit easier for him. There's not a ton of true pass set in his profile right now. So I think taking him at 6 to me is a little bit of a risk, but it's part of the interesting thing with this offensive line class is we have so few left tackles, right? You
Right.
have Freeling. You have Proctor, who some people even, with the weight issues, could he be a guard eventually? And then you're getting into guys like Lomu, right? Who I think he could be available at 24 for you.
Yep.
But then, like you mentioned before, then you're probably going wide receiver with this pick. So I think there's iterations of both that can work where the Browns could come out satisfied with these 2 picks. I've been going wide receiver at 6 more often and waiting on tackle. And I do think with all the veterans they've signed, they have at least some stability on the offensive line they can rely on now too. But I get the idea. If Freeling were to hit his potential, it would be a really nice pick one way or the other, whether they got him here or at 24 eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. And like my mindset going into that is if I have Monroe Freeling about 19th on my big board, like that's like a solid range for him, top 20. But if he ends up being like in the middle of where I expect him to be and he's worth a mid first and you take him at 6, I don't think anybody's complaining about that. If you solved your left tackle problem. So it is a reach, but it is just very hard unless you're the Carolina Panthers to get a starting tackle in free agency without absolutely destroying your bank.
No,
So
I absolutely agree with
yeah,
that. Yeah.
it's tough to do. So there's a inflationary aspect there. And again, with Fano taking some center reps during the combine, I was like, you just opened yourself up to not being a tackle. And I was like, oh, hit me in the soul a little bit. Can't lie.
Yeah.
You're on the
All
board.
right, Washington. Washington here at 7. This is Styles is off the board. Love is off the board. This is between two guys for me. One is David Bailey, the top player right there, and two is Caleb Downs. If we want to build this from the back end forward here, I think to me, I think you could argue Downs is actually the best player, best pure football player in this draft. That's how highly I think of him. I just think, when you look at this Washington team, and they added at both of these positions.
Right.
Was it Nick Cross?
Mhm.
In free agency. They added Odafe in as well. You look at they've given themselves the freedom with this pick to really just let it fall to them. I also think the Commanders are the first team that probably in reality needs to trade down, considering the lack of picks that they have. There's only one other top 100 pick. But I'm actually gonna go with it. I'm gonna go with the guy that I think you could argue is best football player. Give me Caleb Downs with this pick, and we're gonna keep reworking this secondary.
Ooh, okay. So funnily enough, I told you without injury concerns, Tyson's my number 2. That's because Downs, even with positional value, I still have him at 1. And it's crazy to say, but it's just tough for me to knock someone down that, in my opinion, is just, I mean, I don't want to say this because it always ends up coming back to bite us in the ass. Bust proof. So knock on wood, maintains that way. But it's just such a solid player, multiple years. Like I remember when he was going to Alabama, they were pretty much crowning him with a gold jacket. So I mean, he's pretty clear like this is a top tier option. And then again, performed really well in the SEC, performed really well in the Big Ten. Kind of hard to say that it's going to be too much of a challenge jumping to the NFL, even though it still will be a step up. Number 8, New Orleans Saints. David Bailey's going to be my option here. It feels like the value just it lines up a little too much. Wide receiver certainly possible. I assume that's where you're also thinking like go Carnell Tate here and provide essentially, that deep threat capability for a really high floor quarterback. It's not a bad option. So I think honestly, before I hit Dave Bailey in here, think tank option. I think wide receiver edge would probably be the two primary positions I would target. Maybe nose tackle at the beginning of round 2. I think,
Yeah, that sounds about right. Their offensive line is filled out pretty well at the moment.
yeah,
They need more weapons on the offensive side. Yeah.
absolutely. And I mean, Mansour Delane, I'd like to throw him as a curveball in here. I mean, there's secondary wise, it is super. I think we've gotten a little bit more comfortable with the Saints just consistently having elite secondary. And I don't know if the depth and the starting talent necessarily matches what my gut says a Saints defense normally does. But I'm not going to throw Mansour Delane in there just yet. My thought process is I'm probably going to go edge and wide receiver with my first 2 picks. What am I going to get
Yeah.
at the beginning of round 2 for wide receiver? What am I going to get at the beginning of round 2 for edge? I feel a lot more comfortable at edge in beginning of round 2. So I'm going to go with what you believe and go Carnell Tate here, wide receiver out of the Ohio State University. He's supposed to be a 1B. I don't think anybody feels comfortable with Carnell Tate truly being a 1A. But there's not many situations that he would have been drafted into, maybe except for Tennessee, to where that would even be the concern. So either way, he's going to a really good system to be a great pairing, Chris Olave, and it's a great way of investing into your quarterback situation to give it the best opportunity.
I think also it's a good match when you think about Tyler Shuck and his ability to throw outside the numbers vertically.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
really where he likes to create those explosive plays. And Tate, of the 3 guys at the top, because I think the top 3 receivers are all very, very close to equally talented.
Yeah.
Tate is the guy who's going to get vertical to those areas of the field the most often. So I do think of the 3, and I actually have Lemon as wide receiver 1, but of the 3, I think the Saints with Tate, that's a fit that makes the most sense for them.
Yes. I'm personally a huge fan of it as well. Curious what you do here at 9. Because again,
That's
usually I have somebody here that feels like a gut response that's like right away, but not
This
yet.
is I think you could make a case for any of those first 3 players right there. Any of them.
Yeah.
They need more pass rush help alongside Jones and Karlaftis. They whiffed on Anadike Yazama a couple years ago, and they've been hurting in the pass rush ever since. Mawanoa, to me, he's plug and play at right tackle for them. I think he'd be just him and Josh Simmons immediately would be a really nice duo. And then the biggest need on their team is corner. I mean, right now they've got Christian Fulton and they've got Noel Williams and basically nothing else. So I think there's definitely a case for each of these 3 guys. I'm going to go with my gut here and say Delane. I'm going to go Mansour Delane because they really just haven't touched corner all that. They signed Alohi Gilman at safety. They will find a way to get by with Connor and Gilman and maybe draft a safety later on. I'd be curious to see what they do if Caleb Downs were available here, but I'm going to go need here. I think you could argue any of these three players in this spot. Give me Mansour Delane.
All right. Where do you have Mansour?
He's CB1. I mean, he's a top 15 player. I mean, you look at, he only gave up 14 catches last year at LSU, which is just ridiculous, right? Ridiculous. And the ability to play, especially the ability to play man to man for Spagnuolo is going to be so big. He was maybe the best. Him and probably Leonard Moore were the two best man coverage corners in the country this past year, and we'll certainly talk more about Leonard Moore at this time next year.
Don't get me going, man. Don't get me going.
Oh, I know.
I'm digging through like the end of the safety class, and I'm like, dude, I cannot get tempted by a Leonard Moore when I'm in the middle of watching some of these guys. But yeah, Mansour, I mean, think about, he's my number 3 player. That's just my thing. I'm a huge fan of Mansour. I'm a sucker for corners. The more like we talk, you're going to realize that I just have an absurd love for corner. But I mean, I hated what he did at VT. Honestly, I just did not believe in him. Thought he should return. So glad he did. And then LSU just clicked. It's like he felt LSU. And yeah, I mean, I love the situation. I love the fit. Defensive backs coach, A+. So I would love to see Mansour take another step up and could end up being one of those players that everyone's like, shoot, maybe should even went even higher. Number 10, Cincinnati. They've invested relatively well on their defensive front. Boye Mafe, I think for $20 million a year based on the contracts, worth that type of selection. I'm curious where you would end up going at this spot, because again, I'm pretty comfortable with like Mansour Delane, Caleb Downs being at this spot. David Bailey's never here, but I just don't feel comfortable currently with, they pretty much have other edges that kind of need to take those reps for it to kind of paid off. Like I don't trust in the defensive interior at this point. Offensively, I mean, Maui Noah could be an option, but what are your thoughts at number 10?
The board for the Bengals, the way we have it here, it didn't fall very well for them. And it's also something here in Cincinnati with getting a read on what would the Bengals do, right? Because, Styles is off the board. Obviously, Reese is going to be off the board. I don't think he's going to fall this far. It seems to be the consensus. If Jeremiah Love was sitting here, I would really think about it too. But I don't know. With them re-signing Reisner, I don't know that they're going offensive line 10 overall. This feels like I'm not a fan of this, but it wouldn't shock me if they were the team to take the first home run swing on Caleb Banks. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's just the potential, and the Bengals love their measurables. We saw this with Shamar last year. This is a hard one because is Thieneman really going to go this high? This is a spot. Right. Honestly, if the board fell like this and I'm the Bengals, I'm trying to trade out of it.
Oh, absolutely. That's I think whenever we have a conversation where I'm like, what would you do here? It's a red flag for saying this is where our team should try to trade out. You were going to say go swing for Caleb Banks. I'm going to go swing for something else. There's one more year left on DJ Turner and Dax Hill's contract. And I know that the defensive coordinator, Al Golden, used to have Leonard Moore. If you're going to want to go for somebody who is like a Leonard Moore, I think the ceiling for Jermod McCoy could be a very similar role. And he doesn't need to start right away on the boundary. It gives him time to actually get acclimated to the NFL. It's my argument for why I actually like Jermod to Philly. And I'm not super high on Jermod McCoy comparatively. I would want to buy a trade down, of course. But, I'm going to throw a curveball in here. I'm going to say this is a true potential top 5 player if he hits his ceiling. Somebody who will be taken top 5 next year is someone who's going to be very similar. Al Golden's going to love this. And, I mean, he is somebody who can actually lock down a receiver, somebody who can embarrass a wide receiver. So I'm going to go with Jermod McCoy at 10 and then see how that ends up changing everything.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's certainly the swing is worth taking if you feel good about the medicals, because there was nobody. Right. There might have been a couple equal. There was nobody better than him in 2024 at the position. Really, I mean, you're talking about he really at corner had as good a year as a Leonard Moore or Travis Hunter that year, right, for Tennessee. It's just so unfortunate that he got hurt and we haven't seen him in 14 months now. So, really tough situation there. That there is a swing. I mean, it's the Bengals. I think to me they're known to take big swings on talent. So I definitely get the argument there.
Yeah, I just felt like the defensive coordinator connection as well to a similar archetype of player. If they're going to try to fill it with a player that fits perfectly with him, maybe they end up taking that risk. Again, we both assume I think they'll probably try to trade down and make that happen.
We're at 11 here for the Dolphins. I think I'm about to make a pick that I have yet to make in so many mock drafts for Miami because Delane was a popular pick for me. McCoy even is another one where I was like, man, this Dolphins team, they need corners in the worst way. But, they also had I believe the worst pass rush grade in the league. I'm going to stop the David Bailey slide right here. 2 years in a row where he's led college football in pass rush grades, super productive. And look, I know there's some early down concern with him, but this is a Dolphin team that they need help at all three levels of their defense. Secondary is obviously a major one. Even at safety now, Thieneman's probably a consideration with Minka Fitzpatrick getting traded to the Jets. But I'm going to go with the top player on the board there. The Dolphins need to find a way to rush the passer. They signed Josh Uche. To me, that's not enough. They have Chop Robinson coming off a not great second year, but to get Bailey in there would really add some juice to Jeff Hafley's pass rush.
Absolutely. No, David Bailey, talent-wise, as a pass rusher, the NFL is a passing league. You need to be able to at least secure on those important downs someone who can actually make a difference. If you're pretty much doing nothing against a pass, I mean, it's nice to be able to defend the run, but you got to defend against something first. And at number 11, we're not going to take a run defender. Getting someone who can at least rush the passer, definitely going to be a plus. Yeah, obviously there's some potential concerns with David Bailey with the NC State issue as well as after Arizona State this year. But I think those issues are so minute. People are inflating them to James Pierce level. And I'm like, all right. I was like the number one guy being like, I love James Pierce, and that scared the crap out of me. This one, not so much. Number 12, though, for Dallas. Very intriguing spot. Usually, again, you have some top options here. I think Dylan Thieneman could be a choice here. I know they've elected to take a couple options in free agency to fill the immediate need. I have Dylan Thieneman as a top 10 player. I'm a super huge fan of what he can offer to the team. But, I mean, honestly, there's not really good options right now because best player available is like Thieneman, Maui Noah. I think Fano, not really, obviously not for the Cowboys. Interior offensive line as a fallback, definitely not something they would go after. But the only way I would be comfortable with them going probably elsewhere would be if they thought George Pickens was on the move. If GP, they were going to tag and trade him, that would be like where I'm looking at. But Christian Parker, former corners coach, defensive back coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, I think he's going to get his long-term answer here with Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon.
Love it. I'm with you. One of my favorite players in the draft. One of my favorite players to watch in the country for the last 3 years. He's plenty fast enough to play single high whenever you want him to. He reads so well in two high when he has, especially when he has to sit in the box and play in quarters. I mean, he's really over the last couple of years diversified his game, especially this year going and playing with Dan Lanning. And the athleticism is awesome. He can do anything you want on a football field. Super aggressive tackler. I really think that's a serious consideration. To me, that pick, if I had Dallas, would have been either Thieneman or I would have thought about Avion Terrell as well there, but we'll see where the board falls at 20.
Absolutely.
This is a weird one because I don't know that I've done a mock draft where Mauanoa's fallen outside the top 12. This is odd. I haven't had him going outside the top 12, and I don't know that he actually would, but there's a run of teams here who don't necessarily need tackles. The two guys that I'm suddenly in between, because if Mauanoa wasn't on the board, this would be a slam dunk. I think it's either Mauanoa in this scenario, and you just have to take the talent, because I have him as the best offensive lineman in the class, or it's Mekhi Lemon, who I'm probably going to endlessly draft to the Rams. I mean, it's known that they're looking for receiver help. They were in on A.J. Brown. Maybe they still could be later in the summer, but it's hard to the problem is you look at some of these teams and you go, how far is Mauanoa going to fall here? You get to a point where it's like, is he really going to keep falling? Like, and he'd be, to be honest with you, with the downhill nature of his game and Sean McVay and all the duo run schemes, boy, he'd be perfect. He could slide right in there at right tackle and just be perfect. I'm going to do it. Let's have some fun. Let's take Mauanoa to the Rams. And you know what? He'll battle it out. He'll battle it out there with McClendon at right tackle. I haven't had one. I don't even think I've had one where he fell outside the top 10, maybe. Maybe 11 to Miami. I haven't had him getting this far.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the situation where we would have trades, number 10 would have probably been a team trading up either for David Bailey or Maui Noah. And then Maui Noah, if he were not selected, would probably go at 11. I think it's fair.
Yeah,
So
no, I would say so. Yeah.
yeah, so he's gone realistically by 11, even in this mock draft. It's just, for the sake of the viewership and the continuity, we could keep it pretty base level. All right, number 14. I have an idea here, and I'm curious what you think of it. Spencer Fano to center. I think that he can fit a Declan Doyle offensive line. I know center is extremely high at 14. You could use him at guard either as well. But I think he's the highest floor player remaining outside of course, like Mekhi Lemon. But I want to fix the offensive line. I'm a big offensive line, defensive line type of guy. If there's a vacancy there and the talent's there, that's usually what I like to fill it with. But in your opinion, what would your option be here if it weren't going to be going to try to fill the trench?
I think Fano makes sense when you talk about he could play maybe center or guard, whichever. They have at least one need at both. Because I don't know that I'm ready to start just Voorhees and Simpson for 17 games. I've been mocking Ioane to them a lot, and this is where I think the interior debate as an interior lineman. I actually have Ioane, I believe, one spot higher in my OLine rankings than Fano.
Sure.
I think if you're going that route, because with Fano, it takes some projection, and regardless of what position he's playing, he still has to get stronger. I have no questions about Ioane's strength. I think you're getting maybe a half step down of an athlete, obviously, because Fano's lateral agility and his ability to climb to the second level is just awesome. But if I was going interior, I would just play it. I would play it safer and go Ioane. Otherwise, I think we're looking at wide receivers.
Ooh. Okay, so if you're to go wide receiver, let's play that out. I know that you're a big Mekhi Lemon stan, but do you think that the build of Jordan Tyson would be where they would lean to complement Zay Flowers, or you're going, 5'3" and an attitude?
Well, and that's the funny part is because I have Lemon wide receiver 1, but I think for all three of them, they're so close. It depends on fit and need, and I think the Ravens need a Jordan Tyson type of player more so. So if you go receiver for Baltimore, yeah, I'm in on Tyson because to me, Lemon, they're both really good, but Lemon would be a bit redundant to Flowers. I think whereas Tyson gives you a little bigger element on the outside. He can win those one-on-one battles in the intermediate range where Lamar Jackson, when he's on where he really likes to throw, I think Tyson can win those one-on-one battles in that range.
You know what? Honestly, I'm going to roll Jordan Tyson here. Declan Doyle just dealt with a fully loaded receiving core, and then he's going to be going to a much larger step down here in Baltimore if they don't have top-tier weaponry. So I don't want to have Declan Doyle have any excuse not to be a beast. And offensive line, I do think that, he can make it work with alternate options. Jordan Tyson, if he hits, there's not a free agent you could sign that's going to have that type of impact. And I think that maybe you could have that with Fano. Ioane, yeah, you're right. Completely super high floor. I just thought about Declan's history, and I thought about how Tooney could be like a tackle guard versatile player, and that's why I was thinking Fano. But I could totally understand if you just don't want to play games, stick to the floor. Makes a lot of sense to go Ioane.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The Bucs here at 15. I don't know that the board felt great for me here because the two obvious needs, they need more pass rush and they need help at linebacker. So am I reaching down and taking a CJ Allen? I know left guard is a need for them, but I have a hard time thinking they're not going front seven. Akeem Mesidor is somebody I could really think about here. When you talk about especially the urgency of this year and Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield and everything going on there, I could see them taking Mesidor, just going, hey, this guy's he's a little older, but he's a ready-made pass rusher right now. Yeah. Keldrick Faulk is the weird swing because, right now he's not developed as a pass rusher, so you're not really fixing that problem if you're the Bucs, right? So I'm kind of between Allen and Mesidor. They need a CJ Allen so bad. They just can't walk in with the linebackers they had last year. But even then,
Dude, King Alexander Malone, come on. That solves all their problems, right?
I feel like there's so much debate around Allen, too, whether he would actually go this high.
Right. Man, and there's a good linebacker class, too, if you do want to pass on him. It's a good edge class as well. We've talked about that. Luckily, they're kind of spoiled for riches at both. But I don't know. Whatever you think could end up providing the best immediate impact would be like an edge 2 or edge round 2 or edge here and then linebacker in round 2.
And that's the thing is I think you can get both of those on day 2. I'm gonna mess around. I'm gonna make an off the wall pick. I'm gonna do it.
Let's go.
This team needs a left guard. Give me Ioane.
Let's go.
I've been picking so many different front seven players for the Bucks for 3 months now. I'm like, let me just change it up just in case. And Ioane blows him away, and he's the guy at left tackle that fills out that offense, or left guard that fills out that offensive line.
Hell yeah. Okay, that's hype. I was like, yeah, let's not do Keldrick Folk.
I just don't know if Allen. It might be another spot where a trade down makes sense. I just don't know. I don't know that Allen or Mesidor is going to go that high. It just I wasn't as comfortable with it necessarily.
I think honestly, so theoretically, if Philadelphia is looking at a weapon, let's just say AJ is traded somewhere, and let's just say for some reason the Ravens ended up going after Fano. Declan Doyle wants his own Joe Thuney. I think that would be a good opportunity if they trade away AJ Brown to move up and get someone who is on that level of talent, or Kenyon Sadiq if they just want to stick and pick. So some interesting theories there regardless, but 16 to the Jets. I think we've all been kind of on board with some interior offensive line help. Like Ioane seems to be the fan favorite pick. I don't think Fano should be out of the equation. I mean, you have some redundancy for the offensive tackle situation. Fano is a hyper athletic tackle, just like Membu. It looks like that's kind of the theme going forward. Outside of that, Lemon's such a stud. He could end up being an immediate impact. I don't think there's a wrong pick here. I think there's
I think I would go. Well, you know me. I think I would go Lemon. I think with Fano again, it's that interior projection, which is an idea, but they're also signing Dylan Parham at least has them somewhat set where they don't have to force offensive line, and I think day 2 is a good sweet spot for interior guys later to get more depth there. I think I would just go Lemon here and not question. I think to come out of this with whoever they feel is the best defensive player in the draft, and then a Mekhi Lemon, or even if it was Jordan Tyson, then Jordan Tyson too. They got to find proven weapon. I mean, he's not proven yet, but they got to find legitimate weapons outside of Garrett Wilson.
That's perfectly fair. My question to you is, how far of a gap do you think it is between Lemon and Cooper? Because this is different answer for every single person. Some people even have Cooper over Lemon, but what are your thoughts on the gap between the two, or if there really is that much of one?
I think there's a little bit of a gap for me. I'm not in on the necessarily top 20 hype for Cooper. I think he's a top 40 player for sure. I could see the case for him going first round. We might talk about that with a couple of teams here in a bit. I could see the first round case, but I have Lemon. I just think Lemon is so dynamic when it comes to after the catch, the competitiveness, the just sheer dominance that he showed all year, especially this year at USC. I think there is a decent gap between the two of them, and I think Omar is more like a back end first, borderline second round guy. Like he's going to go in the top 40 at the very worst, but I don't see him. I wouldn't go in the top 20 with Cooper.
Sure. I mean, if I had a crystal ball and knew Omar would be available like a late one, let's just say pick 30, I would skip out on Mekhi Lemon. This is just my personal take. I would skip out on Mekhi and then trade up from 33 to draft Omar Cooper. Like I think maybe if you can end up solidifying the line, because I don't know what value is going to be there at the end of one for the interior position. But since we don't have that in here, and since I know there's maybe some teams I feel comfortable late one taking him to, I'm going to solve the issue and go Mekhi Lemon and go after the Dalton selection at 16.
All right. I like it. Defensive player, Lemon. We'll figure out the second round later. We got 2 more picks there, and we'll get that later. All right, the Lions here. I had been for a while. Oh, actually, it still makes sense. I like it in this system.
You looking at Fano?
Yeah, I think I'm still going to do it. It's either this or I go pass rush. But I think, you know what? Now that, because it's all been assumed that, okay, they're going to take a tackle, right? Like this is what they're going to do. And if they don't, they got to take a pass rusher. I think when you talk about a Mesidor or somebody, but I think for this system and the way that they've been running it for years now in Detroit, this is a good fit for Fano. And you know what? Even if it doesn't work out at tackle eventually, and my assumption here is that you move Sewell to the left side. You start Fano at right tackle. If you feel good about it, you start Fano at right tackle. He's a perfect fit in their system with the athleticism. Right. If eventually you don't feel good about it, then you move him inside to guard, possibly see where Christian Mahogany's at in his development. Now, I think there's just a lot of good outcomes here if he gets to Detroit, that he's a system fit. And for now, it solves their tackle. They have multiple ways of going about the tackle problem. They don't have to draft a left tackle. They can move Penei over. Yeah, you know what? I've done it. I've done this one. This is probably my most common pick. For Detroit, I'll take Spencer Fano. I'm in.
Awesome. And for those of y'all who are watching who haven't been following maybe the NFL for that long or the draft for that long, Penny Sewell was a native left tackle coming out of Oregon. So he is somebody who actually already made the transition to the opposite side of the offensive line at right tackle. So he's not making a crazy new move to the left. And so obviously this would be something that could end up working out very well, maybe for both players. Maybe it ends up elevating Penny's game as well, being able to go back to where he has so much experience, as if he can elevate that much more. Number 18, though, for the Vikings, kind of crazy situation here. Like, Kenyon Sadiq is a crazy wild card for the fact that it just depends on what you think of the future of Hawkinson. But I think we're all on board with the idea of defensive interior here as a possibility, as well as safety with Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Corner, I think you're probably going to toss in there as well. Like Avion Terrell kind of feels very similar to pretty much every primary corner in this system, Isaiah Rodgers particularly. But if you are split between these guys, what are you looking at here? I mean, technically CJ Allen as well, with the amount of times they blitz, could be a pretty fun one.
I mean, if you're looking for more, if you're looking on the interior and you're looking for more run stoppers, that's something you can easily find anywhere from rounds 2 to 4 in this class.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just a lot of interior run stoppers. So you don't have to feel forced to take, say, a Caden McDonald, right? Who is somebody I really like. And in all likelihood, we will get him drafted in the first round here because I think he's so good between the tackles. But yeah. I think really McNeil-Warren is a big consideration here. For me, I don't think they would go with Sadiq. I just think they feel good about having Hawkinson and Oliver in there. I would probably lean McNeil-Warren. I get the case for a D tackle. I don't know that maybe they take the swing on Caleb Banks. But I would feel better about McNeil-Warren.
Honestly, with hearing Caleb Banks having that foot fracture, I think that's like the one thing. It's like, are we dealing with a Zion situation where we have a freak athlete that just has a ton of weight, and that's an issue, like a foot issues with players who are 320 pounds and more. That's very tough to actually fully heal from in a sport where you have to be 24/7, go. You know what? I was going to try to see if maybe there was going to be a way to get McNeil-Warren a little bit further down the board, even possibly to the next pick. But sorry to my Panthers fans. I think that going after a top tier defensive back just makes a little too much sense in a place in Minnesota that reveres and respects top tier defensive back play.
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. Yeah. Carolina at 19 to me is one of the most fun picks in this draft. With some of the moves that they've made, I think signing Rasheed Walker makes it so you don't have to take a tackle. I think they're set off the edge. I don't think they're taking another edge player now that Jalen Phillips is in there. Possibilities. Interior, if they wanted to swing at Banks, or I do think Caden McDonald would make their defense a lot better. That's been a pick that I've thought about here at 19 for Carolina. I think CJ Allen, if they want to overhaul the room completely with Devin Lloyd, and then they don't feel great about Trevin Wallace as a starter, then I think CJ Allen is very much on the board here. And the other one I would think about is that top guy right there, Sadiq. I think this is the sneaky Sadiq team. When you talk about the number of inline options that they have, when you talk about, you've got Mitchell Evans, you've got Tommy Tremble, right? You've got Jatavian Sanders moves around a little bit, but they haven't gotten a whole lot out of him lately. I do wonder if this would be a team just to find that receiving ceiling finally in their tight end room, and they would be the ones to actually take the gamble on Sadiq. Because I'm not going to, not gamble is probably the wrong word. Like, I don't hold him in the same light as like Loveland and Warren last year.
Sure.
Right. Like, I don't think in last year's class he goes this high, Sadiq. And I think there's still more to prove. But I think Carolina looking for one, just any receiving out of their tight ends, and two, just more of an after the catch element, which I think he could add in there and make Bryce's life just a little bit easier. I'm gonna go Kenyon Sadiq. I'm gonna make the fun pick. I think you could still front seven. You could certainly make an argument for multiple different positions, but I'm going to take Sadiq. I'm going to try to keep surrounding Bryce Young with talent.
I was really hoping you would go CJ Allen there because
I thought about it hard. I did.
I know. I was really hoping for it solely for this reason, because it's so obvious that the Cowboys taking CJ Allen would make sense. I mean, we already ended up going Dylan Thieneman at number 12. This is the lock pick. I was hoping CJ Allen would be off the board because with Osa Odigizua being traded, there is still a semi vacancy at that defensive interior position outside of obviously your two number ones. And part of me wanted to go Peter Woods for that. Since Quinnen Williams' agent originally was at Young Money APA, and that's actually who's representing Peter Woods, I thought maybe there might be a fun little connection there. But regardless, this answer is just a little too easy. It's a high floor linebacker going to a team that's definitely linebacker desperate. Christian Parker came from a defense that had Georgia linebacker support, drafted Georgia linebacker even last year, Spell Munden. So we're going to go CJ Allen and bring some of that Philly energy over to Dallas.
Agreed. I think that's the perfect first round for Dallas. Get a defensive back and get a linebacker and run. I've no. They've got. I tackle is something later in the, and they can find stuffers. They've got Quinn in it. There's no big issue in there, and they still have Kenny Clark. But no, definitely, I think Allen's a really good pick there at 20 for sure. I don't know that he gets by there beyond that. Pittsburgh.
If CJ fell past,
we got Pitt.
Do you think that would go to Pitt if they trade Patrick Queen?
If they trade Queen, then yes, they would think about it for sure. Yeah. I just don't know that they're going to trade Queen. If we knew they were trading Queen, that would be a big consideration.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to throw it out there because I thought about it. I saw the potential rumors with Queen, and I was like, I was curious what your thoughts would be on that.
Yeah. No, I if you trade Queen, then it's a major consideration. If it's still Queen and Wilson, they're not going to take a linebacker in round one.
Agreed.
They won't do it. Pittsburgh. The three big safeties are off the board. I would think about going there, but they're all off.
Thank God we got Jaquan Brisker.
The amount that I want to take left tackle here is unreal. I'm telling you,
dude.
That they need it. They need it in the worst way. But
I know
they're not going to do. They're going to give Broderick another year. They're not going to replace him right now.
Yeah.
Or even on the right side and move Troy over and go with a Blake Mill. I just don't. I don't think they're going to. I would really highly consider it, but I don't think they're going to do it. This feels like now. If Ty Simpson were going to go somewhere in the first round, assuming Rodgers stays, because I'm in the boat where Ty Simpson to me I would like him to sit a year. I don't want him to start week one. You could think about Simpson, and actually the name to just keep rolling with adding more weapons to this team. This is a team I think Omar Cooper would really fit. I don't know that I've mocked this yet in any other mocks. Like I wouldn't take Boston to Pittsburgh.
Right.
Just that's because it's redundant. It's to both of them. Yeah. This would be a Cooper, a KC spot. And I think Cooper's going before KC. Let's do that. Let's get Omar Cooper to Pittsburgh. And now we're really rolling. You've got Metcalf, you've got Pittman, you've got Cooper as the after the catch guy. And then Freiermuth and we'll still have Darnell Washington. They got rid of Jonnu. But, I mean, you're loaded up on weapons there at that point. I mean, you watched this wide receiver group last year. It was just not good at all. So to add both of those guys and obviously Pittman and probably Cooper both starting, I think that really gives their offense a really different look.
I've gone Omar Cooper to the Steelers. Steelers are my team. Fun fact. So I was just curious. I was taking a step back to allow to hear if your thoughts and my thoughts aligned on that. And, I've gone Omar as well because I just think it's a really good compliment to what they have. I ended up going to high school with Michael Pittman Jr. too, so I have undying respect for him. And I think that he's going to be a really solid veteran wide receiver 3 in this equation, which is exactly what we're paying him for. Sub 20 a year, veteran guy, high tier in terms of just being stable. It's what we need. And then Omar Cooper, kind of the cherry on top. Number 22 for the Chargers is an intriguing one because we've siphoned off the offensive line talent. And I know this is a whole entire new system here with McDaniel. So it's like, I'm definitely not even in the mood to look at Proctor at guard. It would have been a previous offensive system. Huh?
Not in this system. No. Absolutely right.
That's the previous system. Exactly. Yep. Like if you were talking about trying to replace Mekhi Becton in a previous system, that makes sense. I honestly, Pregnon, if you wanted to move down and thought you were competing right away, that's something I'm on board with. I'm a big Pregnon guy. I like the mobility. Yeah. I think it'd work well in this zone system. But I'm trying to remember, did the Chargers do anything at edge in free agency? Because they lost no way.
They re-signed Khalil Mack. So right now you're looking again at Mack and Thule. And that was the other position I was going to say. If you don't go O-line, this is a very good Akeem Mesidor spot. just
Right.
immediately plugs in, ready to go right now, coached up by Jason Taylor down there in Miami. Like
Yeah.
if there's not an offensive lineman, if also throwing this out there, and I don't, this probably goes without saying, if teams were unsure about Spencer Fano at that tackle and he drops,
This is great, Paul.
this would be the number one. Just absolutely put him at
Oh,
guard with McDaniel and watch him make Pro Bowls type thing. But if he ever
absolutely.
fell here, that would be the home run pick. But Mesidor is the guy I keep going back to if we don't go offensive line here. I think it just immediately plugs in 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
Thule, Mack, and Mesidor. I think it'd be really good off the edge.
Absolutely. And then Khalil is also someone who has aged so gracefully and is kind of a testament to the fact that having an older prospect might not be just a death sentence if they're able to maintain their overall ability and their technique, which Akeem Mesidor has. Question for you. For Akeem Mesidor, I've heard some potential red flags on health. Have you heard anything about that? And like, if so, do you think they're valid?
Not recent ones as far as this year, because he didn't really deal with anything this year. I know in the past, I think has it been either foot or ankle issues, right? Also, and he's a bigger guy, right? You talk about in the past, he played in the interior. He's,
Right.
I think 280 plus. So maybe keeping the weight down and just playing as a true edge really helped him in that sense as well. But I think the injury concerns, if they're anything, they're very minor, and we're at least a couple of years removed from that.
Well, if that's the case, I'm going to go Akeem Mesidor here, edge out of Miami. I know some people brought up the elbow as well. They just said like he only played one game, which is the Natty, after hurting his elbow as well. I don't know if that's going to be something that could end up being something. I just saw that on a report. So I was like, it was interesting because I heard someone bring up like, hey, he should probably fall, because I've seen some people with medical red flags. But wanted to ask you, since you're more plugged in than I am, so to speak, or at least more aware of some of these things than maybe I am. So good to know. I think it's a great fit regardless. And you should always have 3 edge rushers in a rotation, especially with Khalil Mack's age.
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. All right. Philly at 23. They're a hard one. Philly's got so few actual needs. Like, even so, safety, if one of them fell, didn't happen. I don't need linebackers. Unless they trade, I don't think I'm not taking another interior guy unless they trade Carter.
Yeah.
And the edge rushers, this is that group of edge rushers now.
Yeah.
That I look at and I go, are we going to get another run of them starting with Mesidor, or are none of them going to go till the second round? It's like Falk with the lack of pass rush, Howell with the lack of size.
Yep.
Parker, it just seems to be, people seem to be in between on Parker. I think this is probably where his range starts.
Mm-hmm.
Zion Young, I think it maybe is a sleeper first round guy as well.
Yep. And
then I always wonder too about one of these years. I've been begging for it for at least 2 years. One of these years, Philly's got to get a third threat at receiver. No, I mean, it just feels like when they get in 11, it just doesn't matter because it's Brown and Devontae and nothing else. Like, I'd be tempted on a Concepcion here. They don't have that. They just don't have it.
Yep. I was going to throw it out there.
I don't think they're going to do it, not unless they're really intending on trading AJ. I just think they're going to be stubborn and they're going to go trenches early. Give me TJ Parker.
TJ Parker?
I think I like him better. I haven't finished my edge rankings yet, but I think I'm going to like Parker as much as I've watched him the last couple of years, more so than Falk or Howell. I just Howell, the lack of length, and I think that could push him out of the first round in the last. Like Ruben Bain earlier in the draft at least proved this guy's an elite run defender despite that. Howell, I don't see that being the same scenario there. I could see him falling around too.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, like, so the Eagles ended up, I believe, extending Goddard for an extra year, and they pushed the $20 million down. Apparently, I think Mike Garafolo was talking about this. If the Eagles ended up doing that, it opens up the trade window for AJ. Like, it makes it more feasible. I'm no cap expert. I would love to be one day. I try my best, but I do think there's a strong possibility that with Goddard, like with the money shifting, AJ probably could be on the move. And if that is the case, I totally agree that KC Concepcion could end up being a huge target for them. I think Omar Cooper Jr., funnily enough, is a great option to add into that mix with Smitty. So Very intriguing to see how that's going to end up playing out. But 24 for Cleveland, we went Monroe Freeling in the first, and I still feel very comfortable with the weapons here. I mean, Denzel Boston, Casey Concepcion, to me, like, I don't know what your opinion is on Denzel. I think he gets a little bit too much flack because people just, he's not an exciting receiver. But I mean, what are your thoughts on Denzel? Because I think we all agree Casey outside of the drops is dynamic and kind of jaw dropping.
I think Boston. This is probably getting close to the top end of his range, maybe a couple picks before this even. He just his game overall reminds me a lot of Jaden Higgins last year, right? And I think Higgins' range was from anywhere from here to about 40, and he wound up going 34 or 35. It was. He reminds me a lot of Higgins. I think you have a bigger receiver who is smoother off the line of scrimmage, especially than people give him credit for. He's got terrific hands. I know there's been the whole man and zone coverage debate lately about Boston and being one of the best players in the country against man coverage, but that's the side that you don't get to see, but maybe 30% of the time in the NFL, right? So there's some things to clean up, especially with just finding holes in zones and things like that. But if the Browns are trying to find somebody who can just win that one-on-one matchup, and add some size to the room, they could add anything to the room. It would improve it for sure. Then I think Boston probably be the pick here. And I have Boston one spot ahead of KC in my receiver rankings.
I'm going to go Boston here. And for another reason as well, I think that if you're going to start pushing down the board for another wide receiver who has a similar skill set to either of these, it's a lot harder to find a skill set of Boston versus you can look at Skylar Bell. You can end up looking at a Deion Burks if you do want to have someone who's nifty and a good separator. Like there are really good archetypes of a very similar style of player with compared to Casey Concepcion versus Denzel. I don't think you're going to have somebody who is as good remotely as Denzel with that same type of build that you're not taking in the second, which is going to be, if you're taking another wide receiver in the second, then it's a different equation. But I'm assuming like third, fourth, fifth, I don't think another receiver like Denzel with a worse skill set deserves to be on the field remotely enough to justify it versus KC. It might be something that you could.
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. I think, you look at the other bigger receivers all have concerns to me. And of the ones remaining, Boston, I think you're right. And look, there's a good chance they're going to draft more than one receiver in this draft anyway. They may just do both down the line. So certainly need help there in Cleveland, as always.
As always.
All right, the Bears. There's the two big swings right there, right up front, but I don't feel great about either of them. The pick that I've made over and over for the Bears is Caden McDonald. Just when you talk about how bad this team was at defending the run between the tackles last year, and Caden McDonald, you want to own the A-gaps, you're going to own him. With he was big number 98. We'll see what number he wears in Chicago if he goes there. But I just think when you look at a team that I like some of the moves they've made in free agency, especially Devin Bush at linebacker. They brought in Kobe Bryant at safety. They still got to fill out that safety room more. The way the board falls here, we're going to probably do that on day 2 instead. So maybe an AJ Halsey or somebody like that gets to him. Whoever that may be. But I think when you talk about a team trying to raise the floor of its defense, and even if he is just an early down player, I think he could be an elite early down player. Think of early career DJ Reader, right? Or what he was in Cincinnati, and just the impact. McDonald, you'll never get the full impact of McDonald from the box score, right? But he's going to be one of those players where it's like, oh, they were a top 5 run defense when he was on the field and like a bottom 5 run defense when he wasn't. I think the impact of McDonald, who was the best interior run defender in the country pretty easily this past year for Ohio State, I think it just makes everybody in that Bears front 7 better. I've made this pick probably 15 times now. I'm going to do it a 16th. Let's do it. Caden McDonald.
Rocket. Sweet 16, baby. Caden McDonald, I mean, super high floor, young. I ended up loving his takeover for Tyleik Williams coming into the year, and I'm so happy that he ended up taking that role. Funnily enough, I was excited for Caden McDonald to take the Tyleik Williams role. I don't know. Have you watched Cole Brevard yet from Texas?
I haven't gotten to him yet, no.
So I was excited for him transferring from Purdue to take over the Tavondre Sweat role because he's about 350 pounds. I think you'll like that watch. He's going to be like probably day 3 UDFA type of guy, like probably like round 7 UDFA. But He's experienced, has some really good technique as well. He's somebody who I'm gonna be, like, hitching my wagon to as somebody that I would have a lot of faith in as a, surprise type of candidate to hit a 53. All right, 26 for the Bills. Jim Leonard's defense. Interesting how they're kind of I feel, correct me if I'm wrong, do you feel like they're also kinda sounding a little bit desperate with, like, the Bradley Chubb, and it just doesn't really feel like when making moves like Geno Stone? It almost feels like they're filling up a roster rather than making, like, solid strides towards success.
Yeah, I think Stone and even Gardner Johnson on the back end, because they needed depth at safety anyway. They basically just had Cole Bishop going into the offseason, and that was it. So I understand
Right.
those signings. The Chubb one, they probably could have gotten Chubb's production for less money than that. I think that was a bit of an overpay. That feels like a name value tax that you're paying there with Bradley
Yep.
Chubb. So I don't love that. I think help off the edge. But now with Chubb in there with Rousseau, I don't think they're going edge first round anyway.
Agreed.
I think the middle of this defense is what you look at, right? Do you take more resources at defensive tackle when they already took Sanders and Walker last
Yep.
year? You still have Ed Oliver. He's going to be coming back from injury.
Mhm.
Linebacker, to me, is a mess for this team. Is there another linebacker we take round one? Is there another safety we reach for round one? And then even guard right now, I believe, David
Mhm.
Edwards leaves a hole
Yep.
at one starter, and you could certainly upgrade on Osiris Torrance. I think guard is actually the position that's kind of the sneaky one here for the
I need to
Bills.
talk before you do for these because I'm like, damn, you're stealing my thunder. I was like, I was seeing we're on the
Yeah.
same page.
And
I was gonna
and
go
and
Brandon.
I'll say this too, with the trade that they made, and there's a big gap to their next pick. I think the Bills are a prime trade down team. Also, I
Absolutely.
think if there's nothing on the board that they love here, they should absolutely trade down and get more picks.
Agreed. Curious if you see this parallel here. Obviously, not like age involved, but Emmanuel Pregnon stylistically feels pretty close to our conversations we were having about Donovan Jackson last year. Like an athletic guard that has tackled tendencies, solid build, and has like kind of more of that physical profile, but is probably going to stick to guard. Do you see any parallels between the two?
Yeah, a little bit. I think Jackson, as he went on through his Ohio State career, got a little more heavy handed. I
Yeah.
actually thought he was more mobile earlier in his career. I think Pregnon to me all the way around, and this is where to me the parallel kind of works is I just think he's going to be really solid, right? Like I don't know that he's got the upside. I know Trevor, when I talked to Trevor Sikkema about Pregnon, he's like, I just don't know that he has the upside. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, but he sure feels like a long-time starter to me. I mean, I really
Mhm.
like you mentioned it. He's longer than a lot of other guards. He really knows how to use his length. He shoots his hands well. I'd give his athleticism probably a B. You're not talking about a guy like a Fano or even maybe Ioane. He's probably even a half step down from Ioane, but I just think he's a good, solid football player. And I really think he's a sneaky guy too to go first round. I'm going to do it. I've been going defense in just about every mock for the Bills, and
Yeah.
yes, they need to continue to build their defense because that's their biggest problem. But I think guard is the sneaky one there, and I like Pregnon as a round one possibility.
Yeah, no, I'm fully on board, especially with the gap to their next pick. Do you want to roll the dice on trying to fill the guard spot with value, or maybe go for one of the linebackers in a super deep linebacker class? I feel like you could probably strike gold a little bit easier with lower tier linebacker value in Leonard's defense than in with the guard in Joe Brady's offense. So I'm curious what you do here at 27 for the Niners, though.
Got options. You got options, and there's
Yeah.
one that sticks out to me on the offensive side. Actually, despite the big move they just made,
Ooh.
this to me, either Cooper. I've drafted Cooper here before, or Concepcion. And
Okay.
they got Mike Evans as the big one-on-one X.
Yeah.
They whatchamacallit, they still have Ricky Pearsall on the
Yep.
outside working the other side, but this is a team that over the last 2 years has really lost the after the catch element in Shanahan's offense. And I
Yep.
think if Cooper and or Concepcion gets to them here, they're gonna now they got needs on defense for sure. I mean, I like the Osa trade for them as far as
Yeah.
the interior. I think they could use help off the
Yep.
edge. I think their secondary, they could definitely raise the ceiling on their secondary. We haven't gotten Avion Terrell off the board yet either, which
Mm-mm.
feels kind of wild. So I wonder, that would be the one for me that I wonder here is if we got to get Terrell off. Well, who do we have left here with these last, 5 picks? It's all,
So
it's all the good teams.
yeah, it's all the good
Oh
teams.
man, and I already went with Lane in Kansas City. Wow, I
I
might double up.
know.
I might end up doubling up. That's wild.
That'd be wild. I can't lie. But
what are the Niners looking at corner right now?
they have Stout, Renardo Green, Lenore. Like boundary wise, I do wonder, like if you can end up taking an upgrade like Terrell on the boundary, or Colton Hood for that matter.
Green, Lenore. This
Mm.
might be a contract thing I have to look at then.
Oh, we're going to spot track. Or do you guys have an internal system?
No, I use over the cap. They help us out with stuff. They help us out with stuff anyway. But what do we
shout out to over the cap? Yeah, I always look.
Oh, they have Lenore locked up.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what makes it tough corner round one.
I feel like that's the one that might be the one mistake we've made in this mock is having Terrell not off the board yet. Might be.
I love Avion Terrell. Believe me, he's gonna go. I'm gonna force him to Seattle if it's my last thing.
Oh, that's
I have the even picks. I'm not letting him fall out of round one.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick to my theory on San Fran. Give me KC Concepcion. Still need this player, this type of player, either him or Cooper in this offense. Going with it.
I made my life a lot harder when I took Emmanuel Pregnon at 26.
Yep.
Not a fan of that because the Texans.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like the thing is, Caleb Banks with the medical red flags, I'm not sold on him going round one for that reason. We've seen great players slip because of concerns. You have a thought?
Here's a scenario here. Well, I think Banks, I'm just so unsure on Banks. He's like the hardest eval for me in the whole class.
Yeah.
I wonder, where are you at on the idea? Actually, I should just say first, where are you at in general on Caden Proctor?
I have him as a top 60 pick, but I think I'd like him more at tackle. I'm just going to be so honest, but I think he could be a short-term fill at guard. I see the upside. I understand the potential.
If they felt like in this system, the way Nick Caley runs it, that he could play guard, because signing Braden Smith, to me, makes me less likely to think they're going to take just a pure tackle like a Blake Miller or somebody.
It was a 2-year as well, correct?
Correct. Yes, 2 and 20.
Yeah. I mean, technically speaking, 2-year deals with guarantees, essentially ones, but yeah.
If there's a thought that Proctor could play guard, I think that's at least a consideration here.
I think it could just be their way to short-term it.
Otherwise, they really could think about, say, a Caleb Banks if they want to go that route, or I think a Kristen Miller is a sneaky back-end first-round guy. He's awesome, man. Kristen Miller, I think, is really good. He's going to make somebody's front seven a lot better, too, especially against the run.
Do you have him as a true one?
As
or like top 32?
Miller? Yeah.
Christian Miller.
I might at the end of it all. I still got to put together the whole board, but he's going to be very close to in there. I'll tell you, because where does Trev have him? Where do we have him on this board right here?
That's a great question.
I had Miller
37. Woods is available. Oh man, I totally forgot about Peter Woods too.
Woods might actually fit this defense better.
Yeah, because I mean, to be fair, I think Christian would work, but
Togiai and Rankins. No, I forgot about Woods too. I think for this type of defense, actually, I would go with Woods.
Yeah, I think over Proctor.
I like Miller a lot, and Miller, that 37 is this is about the range where I think about a Kristen Miller, but
we're going Woods.
Yeah, Woods I think fits that system better.
So looking at my board, so I have Peter Woods at 11, even with like the arm length and everything. I just talk about upside with him. Like you see those freaky plays. I just can't find. That's not copy and paste. You don't find that every year. He was my number 2 player before I found out that his arms were 2 inches shorter than I expected. And it's like, that's just tough. I mean, then he also is sub 300 rather than 315. Now it's 302. But yeah, there's just definitely some things that made me feel a lot more uncomfortable with him. So for transparency, Peter Woods is my number 11 player. And then where did I end up putting? Christian Miller's 23 for me. And Banks with the injury, 34. So
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
that makes sense. I think Woods, the top of the D tackle class to me is very similar to the receiver class, where there's a lot of similarly talented guys, and they're very different. Like Peter Woods of the top five D tackles, he's the one that's like, old school, even front 3 technique.
Yep.
Like, Caleb Banks has this weird in between thing where, in my head, I almost want to comp him to Travis Jones, kind of like that. Miller, McDonald, they're different types of run stoppers. Lee Hunter's his own level of kind of strange. But I think Woods in that Houston defense makes a lot of sense out of all of them. I could see that.
Awesome. Are you going to double dip here with Kansas City at 29? If I promise you Avion Terrell does not fall out of 1.
I'm between two guys here.
Okay.
And actually, same school, Terrell or Blake Miller.
Are you a Blake Miller guy?
I think he's solid. I think this is right about the right range for him to go. I don't think I've heard some noise that, could Blake Miller go as high as top 20? I wouldn't have him that high. I feel like him the kind of the way I do about Pregnon. The more I watch him, I go, he's consistent. He plays with an attitude. He's durable as hell, obviously. He's played a million snaps at Clemson. Like, I think Blake Miller, especially in this range, you know what you're getting out of him. Does he have the highest ceiling of any of these tackles? Not necessarily. And we haven't gotten Caleb Lomu off the board yet either. But I think Miller is a very safe pick. Like, if the Chiefs here were just looking for a starting right tackle, probably gives you 8 solid years. I don't know. I almost think about I'm just throwing a name out there, like a Jack Conklin and what he's done for a decade or so, right? Like, I could see Blake Miller being that type of player. He'll never be a Trent Williams or something like that. But if you're looking for just plug and play, this guy could probably walk into the NFL and at least be an average starting right tackle. I could see that. Do I double dip or do I go with?
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched a prospect and there was just one game on their film that was so atrocious that you could never get over it, even no matter how solid, like maybe the next year was or the rest of the games, the rest of the year? Like, have you ever like watched a player and it's just like, I can't be confident in you because I've seen you fail so miserably?
I'm trying to think of names off the top of my head.
But you have had a player like that.
I mean, I'm just thinking of recent examples. Yeah. Like Will Campbell, those 2 games against Jared Verse in Florida State, that was tough. But he was so good, and he was so good in like every other game the rest of his career.
Yep.
Donovan Jackson last year, it's unfair because he was playing. It was his first game at left tackle. I felt so bad for Donovan Jackson last year when he was playing Penn State. And it's like, here's your first game starting at left tackle. Here's Abdul. I just felt bad for him. There's probably quarterbacks I've done that for.
Right.
That's probably those are probably the guys I would do it most often for is the quarterbacks.
Yep.
I'm trying to think.
Blake Miller versus Texas in 2024 scared the shit out of me.
I mean, that's a rough unit to go against too. They got whacked. They got whacked that day in the trenches on both sides. Absolutely.
Yeah. It was tough to watch, man. Like, it was tough.
Sure. I mean, and look, I mean, it's the other thing too, where guys even going in this range, it's like, it's like when people even in the NFL, when they'll judge a guy, like when they judge Will Campbell for giving up 2 sacks to Myles Garrett. I'm like, like, what do you want?
Is Myles Garrett?
Like, what do you want? Yeah, I'm like, honestly, like if what is it? I think was it Colin Simmons that teed off on Blake Miller? I'm like, well, sure, he's Colin Simmons. He's gonna go top 10 next year. This guy's a freak. Like, there's sometimes I almost have to take that into account the other way, where I'm just like, this other guy is so good. Like Jared Verse against Campbell, I think in his first game at Florida State, I'm like, that's a freak. Okay, that's a different level of just what the hell is that, right? Like, I think that's the way I think of it more so usually. But there's probably other examples I'd have to go back and think of. But it is something you wonder about because those are the types of players you're going to be facing. If not
on a daily,
a good amount of the time, right?
So exactly,
it is something to think about. But I try on the high or low end. I try not to put too much into one game necessarily.
Fair, yeah, no, absolutely.
Because there's probably guys the other way where it's like, man, this guy was not great all year, and he had one spectacular game, and it's all right. Now we're here. What do we do with this? Yeah. So I'm gonna mix it up. I'm gonna go Blake Miller here and plug him in at right tackle.
Okay.
This team needs help at right tackle and left guard. And if they want to run the football with Kenneth Walker, they got to get better up front.
I respect that. All right, at 30 for Denver, I think I'm going to call in a player who I have a lot of faith in, and I think I'm gonna make a move here. Let me know if you heavily disagree with this, but I'm looking at Jacob Rodriguez to Denver.
I disagree with it.
Okay.
As a first-round pick here at 30.
Yeah.
Because they did re-sign both Singleton and Stranad.
Yeah.
And
so you think because of the situation with the re-signings, it's not at the position to reach?
Yeah, I don't think they're going first round linebacker. There was a time
Okay.
where I thought that before those signings going into free agents. What's funny is I figured they would let the other two walk and keep Greenlaw, and it was flipped
Right.
the other way. And now Greenlaw's in San Fran. Um,
Mm,
I don't think they're going linebacker round one. I think they will want to find some depth because I don't know that they feel great about Drew Sanders behind them. But Singleton and Stranad are going to start. I'd be
yeah.
more tempted here. I don't
Mm,
think they would go. Kristen Miller is a good spot here too, with John
yeah.
Franklin. With John Franklin Myers going,
I know I've gotten some pushback because so many Broncos fans are big Savion Jones guys. I don't know about you. I was not a Savion Jones type of dude. Um,
no, he was just. I mean, to me, he was a day three guy. I mean, there was
yeah.
flashes, but I wasn't ever overwhelmed with him by any means.
You know what? I like your suggestion. I've been going Keldrick Falk to replace John Franklin Myers and having him bulk up and just say screw it like a freaky young talent. But Christian Miller's higher on my board too. We're gonna rock him.
Oh, Miller, I think, is one of the safest picks as far
Yeah.
as kind of like Blake Miller right before him. You just know what you're getting,
Yeah.
which is fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If his
Yeah.
career ends up going like Ashawn Watson,
Right.
just a run defender for a long time, that
Absolutely. What we want to do here.
New England's gotten a lot harder at 31.
We still got
This
Lomu
has
on the
gotten to
board
be a
too.
tough pick.
Makes me feel so weird seeing Lomu and
Lomu's on the
Proctor
board.
here. Inachor, or however you pronounce it properly. It's a weird spot.
I've been going edge player a lot for this team,
Yeah.
but I don't know that they're gonna. They signed Draymond Jones. They need help off the edge. They need a pass rusher. This
Right.
is one where I think this is one where an R. Mason Thomas would be a sneaky pick, or even lately people have gotten in on Malachi Lawrence, like just explosive, twitchy pass rushers that on this team will not have to play much on early downs.
What do you think of Malachi?
I mean, it's to me similar, and it was kind of a late breakout for him here at UCF. To me, I feel pretty similar about him and R. Mason, where
Yeah.
it's like you've got all the twitch and the explosiveness off the edge, especially the wider you can line them up, the better.
Yeah.
It'll just be a question of how often they can play on early downs, right? Like, do you really lean into these guys are hardcore DPRs and that's what they're going to be? And
Yeah.
do you take that guy in the first round, or do you think you could make them average run, like in the sense of what the Jets tried to do with Will McDonald,
Mhm.
where it's like, can I get you good enough in run defense so you can be an every down player? Like, would
Yeah.
I take either of them at 15 like they did McDonald? Absolutely not. But it's in that same mold of how many downs can I rely on you for? But for what they do, yeah, they're
Yeah.
explosive as hell. I mean, if that's all New England's looking for is we want a better pass rush, yeah, I'd probably go our Mason Thomas here.
Okay.
But it's just a matter of if I also feel like, should we take a developmental tackle?
Mhm.
They got Kevin Byard in there at safety, and I'm not taking another safety here anyway.
Right.
Yeah. All right,
I'm a big Malachi Lawrence guy. That's like Malachi actually lives here in Dallas with me. So it's like we've been able to actually meet up and stuff. I've been a big fan of his game. So I'm curious. I was curious what you thought of him as well. I got a lot of love for R. Mason Thomas too.
I'm gonna lean in on R. Mason Thomas here. I think Lawrence has obviously been a late riser lately, and I feel like Thomas at Oklahoma, just what he's given them, the explosiveness he gives you off the edge. I think it just works in this rotation. New England still needs to get better in the trenches on both sides, but they'll get that more immediately on the D line.
Okay. R. Mason Thomas it is. All right, 32 for Seattle. Interesting situation.
Terrell, no question, or what?
I made a promise, so we're gonna go Terrell, but I want to discuss some other options as well, just because we promised something ahead of time. My Seattle fans, if they wanted to stick around, I'm honestly not too against, especially in this this new. It's not LaFleur. What's the offensive coordinator's last name from San Fran? Oh my God, it's like Fleury or something like that.
Yes, isn't it? It's Brian Fleury, isn't it?
Yeah. So Fleury's offense, I think Caden Proctor could actually slot in at guard and have some tackle redundancy. I would say trade back. You have like 4 or 5 picks, but if you have to stick and pick value-wise, there's Lomu here. I think that works extraordinarily well with Zabel and just basically say screw Flurry and what he wants to do. I'd rather just build the offense to have cohesion. Oh man, Lomu's impossible to drop. But am I gonna break my promise to you? Lomu feels so good.
I don't. Yeah, but where are you slotting him in though?
Right guard.
You're gonna move him inside too because he's always. It feels like he's been talked about more between obviously the two Utah tackles of staying at tackle. So
I know. I just don't think it's the necessary power profile for me to trust him at tackle compared to when I know there's some reps where Dallin Bentley was playing in line next to him, and he just looked actually a lot more comfortable unleashing the power that I know he does have. I have a vision for him that would be similar to Zabel, but not on the same tier. I had Zabel top 10 last year. Just freaking, I mean, you saw Zabel at the Senior Bowl last year.
Yeah.
Just absolute animal. Different tier. You know what? We'll go corner. I know 5'3" and an attitude is going to be what we talk about here in Seattle. I mean, you got Josh.
You'll have the two. Well, between Terrell and Witherspoon, you'll have the two angriest corners in football. That's for sure.
The blitzes coming from Terrell and Witherspoon are going to be legendary. Because I know Terrell comes in hot.
He comes in hot in the run game, too. He's been one of our highest graded run defenders at the position, I think, for at least the last 2 years. I mean, he's just so aggressive to the ball like Witherspoon was. So, and look, I think even with re-signing Jobe, they need more depth at corner. If there was a safety you were willing to reach for, maybe a safety also. I think losing Kobe Bryant is very low-key a big loss for that defense. They need to replace him. And the right guard spot, like you mentioned, right? I wonder if they would even think about going with a true guard and just going with a Chase Basantis, right? So for me, he's not a first round guy.
Yeah.
But if Seattle's just looking to not trade down and they're just going to fill a spot, he would fit also. I think the footwork and the zone ability there would fit with Seattle too.
Do you think Flurry is going to incorporate a bit more, like a little bit more of a zone aspect than maybe what we kind of projected with San Fran's offense, or do you think that he's going to kind of stick to kind of more of a mixed scheme? Or am I just fucking up? You can call me out on that.
I've been kind of making the assumption that it's going to look, at least at first, like the outside zone base that we get from all those guys. And because even Kyle Shanahan's got so good at adjusting with his personnel, with the fullback. Like if he wants to run power lead for a week, he'll do that. I think Fleury probably sticks to more of the foundations of the stretch. But I mean, either way, even the way that Kyle runs it with some of the pullers and pin pulls and things like that, you still want athletes up there. So I think athletic offensive lineman, regardless, is going to be the theme.
Fair enough. Well, Dalton, excellent mock draft, dude. It was so fun. We had some cool curveballs in there, which is the best part of doing this in the first place. Everybody can get a boilerplate mock draft, but actually having some fun twists is what's going to happen on draft night too. So I appreciate it, my friend. Say goodbye to the people and let them know where they can find you.
Absolutely. As always, the PFF NFL show and the PFF college football show on YouTube. We'll be doing mock drafts galore for the next month or so on both of those channels, and then even written ones as well. And use the mock draft simulator for yourself on PFF.com too.
All right. Well, thank you guys all for watching. We'll see you later. Peace.